Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to weekly BrightID AMA. It is November 3rd. We do not have a designated topic today, but we do have researcher Sanskriti here, who's going to ask some questions about our DAO and other DAOs in BrightID. She's also going to be doing her own recording for her research purposes. So in addition to the normal BrightID recording, hers will also be recorded, just in case anyone cares.
Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you so much for the introduction. I think I can't record on my own without the host permission, so it's all right. Can you share the recording with me after the interview?
Absolutely.
All right. So can I just, for my questions today, will you, Ashraf, and Monamisa will be answering primarily, or who will be attending the questions majorly from representing BrightID?
Yeah, all three of us are part of the BrightID core team and have been for quite some time. We could all answer. Hopefully, Adam Stollard, the founder of BrightID, will also join us during this call. He generally does. And this is a public AMA, so anyone in the world that feels like showing up is welcome to show up and participate.
Sure, no problem. So, Philip, can I get to know a little bit about your role in BrightID, about your, Ashraf, and Monamisa's role in BrightID? People who will be answering the questions today.
Yeah, so I've been involved in BrightID since before it existed. Sort of I call myself a founding advisor. I don't have any technical skills, but I have deep passion for this.
Amazing.
And basically needed the problem to be solved back before I understood the extent of the problem. So back in 2018, basically thought that we should bring cryptocurrency to the world. There should be cryptocurrency universal basic income. There should be cryptocurrencies that have a universal distribution mechanism built at their core, at their genesis. Like Bitcoin's cool, but it'd be way cooler if every person in the world had some, instead of just a small group of people having it.
Amazing.
Got obsessed with that idea, tried to do a different solution to the same problem of how do you uniquely identify humans so you could give them stuff. Met Adam Stollard along the way and have been working with him and the team to bring BrightID into existence ever since. Helped launch all of the various DAOs that are around the BrightID ecosystem. Outside of BrightID, I'm also deeply involved in a lot of other DAOs, both public good DAOs and venture capital DAOs. So have a pretty broad concept of what DAOs do today, have done in the past few years, and inklings of what they may do in the future, but it's going to be wild, so we'll just have to see.
Right. So, Philip, like you said, the purpose it initially started with bringing cryptocurrency to the world and making it more universal. Can you talk a little bit more specifically why you wanted to start it with the DAO? Like, was your focus DAO, or what you more focused towards cryptocurrency in particular, or DeFi?
Yeah, so at the beginning, so back in 2018, we weren't trying to be a DAO. We were trying to be a tool to verify unique humans. Over time, we needed to coordinate people and capital and created a simple DAO to do that. We built it on Aragon. Aragon was an amazing tool back then. We were super excited to be building on the frontier with them. We pushed them to create their first membership DAO. So prior to that, all DAOs were plurocratic, and the amount of your tokens dictated the amount of your governance influence. That is not how we wanted BrightID to work. So the B main DAO, which was the first one we created, was set up that each token holder had one non-transferable token that was assigned to them that gave them equal voting power as anyone else who had one of those tokens. The people that had the tokens could vote anyone else in or out. And that was a good small scale DAO. We still use it for some things today. Unfortunately, Aragon on mainnet became sort of unusable because of cost. A lot of those operations have been wound down. But back when we started, it cost 5 cents to do an action, so that made sense. And then when we sort of had to largely abandon that because it was costing $5 every time someone wanted to take an action, and multiple members needed to take actions, that just wasn't viable.
Right. Absolutely makes sense. So how are you? Okay, so I think you mentioned a really interesting problem that's like the increasing cost based on arrogance. So how are you trying to deal with it in case of BrightID? Like what are you planning to do?
So largely we've moved governance off of mainnet at this point. So there's a variety of different DAOs that do different things around the BrightID ecosystem. We have a couple Aragon DAOs on ID Chain. So ID Chain was a purpose-built blockchain that we spun up to handle communication between BrightID nodes. BrightID nodes need to come to consensus with each other somehow. It doesn't matter how they do it. Because mainnet was expensive and test nets we found out could be turned off. We rolled our own, so that's called ID Chain. I believe that ID Chain was the first place that Aragon was ever deployed that wasn't mainnet. So we still have some BrightID DAOs running on ID Chain Aragon, and those are free to use. They're good for decisions. They're not good for economic things. Then our community also launched BrightDAO, which is separate from the core of BrightID. It's the community, and we launched that with the Gardens platform created by OneHive on Gnosis Chain. So again, their economics are not a problem. It costs a tiny fraction of a penny to do an action. So we do a lot of governance on that platform, and economics is not. We don't have to worry about cost yet. There's enough economic activity on Gnosis Chain that we can pay contributors, real amounts of capital, and they're able to turn that into money to pay their rent and buy their groceries.
I see. Amazing. So, okay. So let's like you said. So as per my understanding, a part of your decision making, it's being done on the ID chain that is still Aragon based, and then BrightID launched a separate unit called BrightDAO, which is separate from the BrightID core BrightID, and that's more economic for you. And there also you do a part of your governance, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So right, the core team pays itself using So we've moved it to we make decisions on the ID chain Aragon DAOs, but they're not good for actual economics. But we can make a decision that then we take to a multi-sig. So we've got a couple Gnosis safes on mainnet that we listen to what we voted for in the DAO. Once it's agreed, then an even smaller group does the multi-sig transactions to pay the core contributors. In addition to separate from the community DAO, BrightDAO, which does all its activity on Gnosis Chain, separate pot of money, separate people getting paid. That's like, it's not core activities. It's community and ecosystem activities. So it's a mix of all these things. It's too many DAOs, it's too many multi-sigs, but you do what you got to do.
Right, I see. So if I'm understanding correct, it's sort of like a hybrid decentralized model and not completely decentralized, because you still have sort of a smaller group, or like you mentioned the core team, which is dealing with the major important decisions, or taking action on them. Am I correct?
Yes, and it's sort of always been that way. Let me see if I can get you Aragon did a great write-up about BrightID a few years ago. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. This is a great resource that Aragon did. Here, I'm posting it in chat. Most of this sort of still holds true. We really embraced the idea of sub-DAOs.
Right.
And now I guess I would expand that to say sub-DAOs is like, could also be a Gnosis safe. It's close enough. The idea is not everyone should be involved in all the decisions. That smaller groups of people should be in charge of decisions about a particular topic. They're the experts. They have the time and the energy to pay attention.
Yeah.
And then, so the way we did it is like the main DAO would send money to the sub-DAOs. The sub-DAOs have a smaller group of people that then take actions. And as long as they're doing a good job, the mothership would continue to fund them. But if suddenly they became corrupt, they started doing things wrong, their impact is limited because the mothership would just not send them any more money in the future. So you can be much, much more efficient. I think that if you try to have everyone participate in all parts of governance, it's a recipe for failure.
That's correct.
You know, if someone needs to get reimbursed $50 for something that they did for the DAO, that should not be a vote of all of the members. It should be there should be a quick. We had a BBiz, we called it, which was a 3-person multi-sig that you could come to for those simple things. Or also, BBiz did a lot of, when there were complicated things that the main DAO needed to do, like multi-step transactions, they would authorize BBiz to do it. So it's like, hey, we want to trade this $1,000 worth of ETH for these weird tokens and then stake them. So BBiz would take all those actions because it was a 3-person. It was a 3-person. It was still an Aragon DAO at that point, but 3 people could act much more effectively than 15.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of giving smaller groups autonomy, but giving them a short leash. So that if it doesn't work out, because hey, it's not as decentralized, it's not a problem.
That's quite interesting. I think that's a very interesting insight that you provided there. Let's come back to BrightID a little bit. So I'm trying to understand BrightID from like, what is the function that you intend to achieve with it, or what is the motto that that you are targeting? So what do you, if you could tell me about BrightID, what do you want to do with it? What are you doing with it right now? Where you want to take it a little bit in the future in terms of function that you want to provide to the market? I think
sure. The BrightID has always had one very specific goal, and it's really small, but really, really important. And that is, you should be able to prove to any integrated system that you exist once on that system. It provides no information beyond that. The example I like to give is, in the United States, in order to drink alcohol, you need to be 21. So if you go to a bar, in order to drink, what you need to do is prove you're over 21. What you actually do is you hand them your license. Now they have your name, your address, your height, your hair color, and your birth date, none of which they needed. All they actually needed was a binary response from an entity that they trust, in this case, the DMV, that you're over 21. So theoretically, there should be a way that everyone could believe and accept that was just like a green check mark on your phone. And that because the process was done correctly, the bartender could know, yep, they're good to drink. And the only information that they got was that, yes, the DMV says it's okay.
Right.
So BrightID is trying to be that. It's a binary check mark. Does this user meet the criteria that you've set out? And they're not already on your system.
Okay, so what are the entities that you are trying to cover with it though? Like, it could be like a broad area. So what entities you're trying to integrate for this? Yeah,
so in the long run, we hope loads of things will use BrightID. At this point, the barriers to entry make it such that Web3 has been kind of where our beachhead has been. BrightID uses cryptography. It uses blockchains behind the system for consensus, but it's not a blockchain itself. So theoretically, it could work with everything. It could work with Facebook and Twitter. Those are hard nuts to crack, but it could work with them. So our biggest users to date have been Gitcoin, which they use quadratic funding, which is an amazing, wonderful system, but is susceptible to Sybil attacks. We've worked with Rabbit Hole, which is a great platform where people can use crypto protocols and learn about them and get paid to do it. Again, that's great, and it works really well if you have individual humans. But if you let the bad guys come in, if you say, hey, we'll pay you $10 to learn this thing, that's great. Except the bad guys will come in and they'll learn it 100 times. So Rabbit Hole, One of our early big successes and still one of the biggest users to date was the honey faucet. So this was a community token that wanted to get out to more people, and they created a faucet that anyone could claim some of their community token by being BrightID verified.
I see.
That leads to a new site that is recently launched that doesn't have a lot of traction yet, but I think is going to be the biggest use of BrightID to come, and it's called Unitap, unitap.app. And at Unitap is a universal faucet. So anyone that's BrightID verified can go to Unitap and claim right now small amounts of gas on, I don't know, 15 or 20 different networks. So this is a great way to solve a cold start problem. How do you get someone to have a non-zero balance? You know, we talked about it's very expensive to do transactions on Ethereum mainnet, but there's lots of these side chains and L2s that's not expensive, but you can't do the action if you have zero. You only need a fraction, like on Gnosis chain, it costs 1/100th of a penny to do a transaction, but you still need that non-zero amount. How do you get that to someone? So on Unitap, anyone can just show up and get that tiny amount to get started. So we give them a penny's worth of gas fees, but that's plenty to do, a dozen transactions. In the future, Unitap plans to launch broader token taps so that any community like OneHive did could launch a token, could launch taps for their community token so that more people could get access.
I see.
We're big fans and friends of the Song a Day community. They're going to be launching a game contest ratings token curated thing using their song dust token, and everybody needs a little bit to play the game. And while it does have value, you don't need much to get started. So we can just give it to everybody. And you need something like BrightID in the way, because all of the other faucets that have gone on to become at all popular get abused. Unfortunately, the bad actors, it only takes a few bad actors at massive scale to ruin it for everyone. The example I like to give at Halloween, sometimes people put out a bucket of candy and they write a little sign that says, please take one. And most people just take one. Maybe a few people take two. None of that's a problem. But then someone comes along and steals the whole bucket. And it ruins it for everybody else. And we can't have nice things. So we believe that with BrightID, the whole world can have more nice things because it stops the bad actors from taking more than their fair share.
And that's a very noble approach. I really like it. That's amazing. So in this attempt to achieve this goal, what do you think are the prime challenges that you're facing? I understand that because it's like a complicated system and a very developing, the whole Web3 area in itself, it's so dynamic right now. There will be so many challenges. But if you could think of right now being one of the founding members, from your understanding, what do you think are the biggest challenges that you see are coming towards, let's say, BrightID in particular, or even DAOs in general?
So I mean, on the BrightID side, big challenges. Number one, getting people to take action. It's not hard to get a verified BrightID today. Yeah, we still hear lots of people complain about how hard it is, when that's just not really true. So right now, almost any good actor can get a BrightID in 15 minutes. They attend one of our many times a day connection parties. They happen on Zoom. They happen many times a day. They're in many different languages. So the vast majority of people could get it pretty easily. But we still get a lot of complaints about that. Another big problem, BrightID is a public good. It didn't raise money from VCs, and it's chronically been underfunded. We've been supported in a variety of ways from a variety of organizations in small amounts. Gitcoin has helped us a lot, and all the wonderful contributors on Gitcoin through the quadratic grant rounds. But BrightID has been chronically underfunded, and if we had more resources, we would be able to build this faster.
Right. Why do you think so? Do you think there is a prime reason for like the underfunding that's going on in BrightID? Do you think that's a general case for the DAO, like that's an industry-wide problem, or do you think it's more specific to BrightID because of one particular thing or an issue that you foresee?
It's a variety of things. So part of the problem, hey, welcome Adam, founder of BrightID. Sanskriti is at university in Portugal, and she is writing a paper about DAOs and in the process of interviewing us right now. So that's what's going on because no one else has been asking any questions. So I've just been answering all of hers.
Great. Well, Zoom had a major outage for the past half hour. I guess they just got it fixed. So I'm
interesting. So the rest of us have all been on talking.
Yeah, their main US server was down for the last half hour.
Got it.
But now it's back. So here I am. And Mono, Igor, Victor, all were in the same position as me. And I'm sure most of the people who wanted to join the AMA also couldn't get in.
Got it. All right. Well, if they show up, we may need to shift this to a more general discussion. But
no problem.
Then, I'll keep answering your questions.
Yeah. So you were asking about funding. So BrightID is a public good, and did you share with her the sponsorship thing? So that's our.
No, we've not gotten into any. This is the first talk we've had about money in any way, shape.
Oh, okay. So you've been talking about other things. Okay.
We've been talking about
money the whole time. Yeah, I haven't been here. Anyways, nice to meet you. Thank you for having questions. That's what this is about. And Philip is great at answering questions. He's been doing it for years. He's like, might be our best question answerer out there. So you're in good hands. Yeah, I would say that right now, crypto goes through waves where like sometimes it's like when we first were trying to get funding for BrightID, it was really, really hard. We were looking for grants, and getting that first grant was just like a major breakthrough because so many grants were having problems. We actually, even after getting that grant, Aragon told us, so Aragon, huge company worth billions of dollars, they told us they had given out grants to, I think, 5 or 10 different projects at the time that they thought were really important, and we were one of them. This was 3 years ago. And when we were trying to collect our last grant payment, they told us we're just out of money. You guys are one of the lucky ones. There's some of the other grants we just couldn't give them any of their money, and you guys got, at least you got like 80% of your money or something like that. So that was a time called crypto winter, and so we've been through times before that are where it's hard to get money. And then there's other times, I mean, so we sold sponsorships, which is the sustainable way to fund BrightID. It's still the way. I mean, it's I'll share a link, I'll share an article with you about it, but that also goes through ups and downs. Like there was during the bull market, people were fighting each other to buy our special deal that we were selling on sponsorships. But in the couple of years leading up to that, it was just like, okay, nobody wants these things, that they're really hard to sell. And then suddenly just like this rush comes and they all sell out, and now we're kind of back to like, okay, it's hard to find people who want to pay for BrightID. So also when BrightID first launched, there was huge hype. I guess it was a bull market a year ago. Huge hype around the Bright token. The Bright token was worth 30 times what it is now. So we've had like a 98% crash in the value of our token. That sounds shocking, but we look around at other projects and almost the same thing across the board for a lot of projects. So it's just, yeah, it's tough times right now to be a project in the crypto space. But having said that, I mean, grants are still being made. Things are still getting done. We still build during this time, even if money is tight, we still build. That's just
BrightID is so much better now than it used to be.
That's true. That's true. So it's like it has nothing to do with how good BrightID is. It's just like these are tough times right now, and we're gonna make it through like last time. So and then once we the next well, we will, because like this is an open source project that's not going anywhere. It's not yeah, like there's volunteers that run nodes. And so it's like, it's kind of like Bitcoin or Ethereum. It goes through ups and downs, but doesn't go away when it has a down cycle. It's not like a company where they could decide like, oh, let's go out of business. This is well, let's move on to something else or something like that. It's like, this is a core piece of infrastructure, and it's just not going away. So we've
been building this for 5 years through every part of the cycle. We still believe in it. It works dramatically better than it used to. The things on the horizon, the things on like the visible horizon are exciting and compelling. We've got use cases that we could see being explosively popular. Still needs to happen, but it feels better now. BrightID is significantly better now than a year ago, even though the crypto markets and therefore like the tokens, we were in a better financial position a year ago, but BrightID is a lot better now.
Well, I really wish it keeps on getting better. I think it will. So good luck to you guys. Definitely, you're doing an amazing job. I have 2 follow-up questions on what Adam and Philip, what you said. So first question is, so it feels like to me, hearing what you said, that this is sort of an industry-wide problem, right? Like in the crypto space altogether, and keeps happening.
And not just the crypto space. The crypto space is somewhat more aware of the problem than the Web 2 space, but the whole world is being wrecked by this problem in ways that most people are unaware of. Or even the ones that are kind of aware, they hide their head in the sand. You know, Twitter and Elon Musk have been in the news like crazy recently because of their bot problems. You know, Twitter suggested that they have 5% bots. Have you ever been on Twitter? It's much more than 5% bots. It is blatantly obvious that that's true. Yet here they are saying that it's 5%. Elon said, no, it's definitely more than that, and they're gonna have a court fight. He's saying, hey, maybe, people should pay $20 a month to be verified on Twitter. BrightID is saying, hey, let's solve this whole problem for the world in an open source public way that everyone can use. And let's charge everyone $1 per lifetime.
Yeah.
That seems like a better model.
Right. So, but when you say, Philip, when you say you feel like it's not just the crypto world, but like the whole world, can you be a little more specific? So do you believe that it's happening in like all the sectors of business, all economies, everything? You think
effectively, yes. Yeah. So I'll give Randy an example. So video games. When people play video games, they like to do it socially. They like to play with other humans. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of bots playing video games. And nobody wants to be playing video games with what they think are people, and they're really playing against bots. That's no one wants that. If you want to play against the computer, that's fine. You can choose that setting. But when you think you're playing against people, you really want to be. Yet there's millions and millions of bots playing video games. Another example, polls on Twitter. Polls on Twitter are really fun, and they seem useful until you actually go and Google buy Twitter votes, and you realize that for $50 you can buy 10,000 Twitter votes to any poll you want. And I went through and did this once and was blown away. I didn't buy 50,000, but you put the poll, you link to the poll, you pay your money, with a credit card, and 5 minutes later, there's all the votes. So Twitter polls are garbage because anybody can influence them in wild ways because of this civil problem.
Right. Yeah, I see.
In Discord, so the crypto world and lots of other communities are using Discord. Unfortunately, anybody can go spin up as many Discord accounts as they want and come in, cause problems in communities. They can overinflate communities to make them look like they're popular when they're not. They can come in and say harmful things that ruin the public discourse in the Discord channel. And you can kick them out, sure, but they can just spin up a new account and come back tomorrow and say the same horrible things that they were just saying. So many problems with civils. Like I said early in this conversation, we just can't have nice things because of the civils.
Yeah. So I would like to understand, why do you want it to be a DAO though? Like, this problem can also be solved if it was not a DAO, let's say, and a lot of your functions are not really decentralized as such either. So why do you want this to be like, why would you call BrightID a DAO, or why would you aim it to make it a DAO? Because what you're trying to do is like solve the,
Let's clarify a little bit. BrightID is open source software that's a public good. BrightID is not a DAO. There are groups of people that support BrightID that organize themselves as DAOs, because that's a great way to organize with people on the internet. But BrightID very much is not a DAO. There are, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 DAOs that all support BrightID. None of them are BrightID. Like, Adam created BrightID. He birthed it into existence. It's out there. He doesn't control it. Mm-hmm. He's a voting member of DAOs that support it, but no one controls it. No one owns it.
We have some centralized pieces, because it'd be cool if you could just say, oh, we're going to go completely decentralized. Like Philip said, DAOs, we think DAOs are cool. So we helped birth some DAOs that help out with BrightID. We're like one of the earliest adopters of DAOs. Like, we created the first DAO ever that featured one person, one vote, and we did that like over 3 years ago. And yeah, we've had DAOs when it was extremely painful to have DAOs and no one else had DAOs, and so it's like we like being on the bleeding edge of that, because we think it's cool to organize in that way, and it fits open source software really well. But yeah, there's still some centralized pieces. Like we still have an old school Twitter account. We still have an old school website and stuff like this. So we would love to move everything into decentralized, but all the pieces aren't quite ready yet. But yeah, we love DAOs. We love that type of organizational model, and so we've just been willing to be on the forefront, even when it was kind of painful to do so.
Right. So as per my understanding, Adam, you're saying that there are parts of BrightID itself which you have organized into smaller DAOs, but there are other pieces which are centralized, and you would love to move towards decentralization of those pieces as well, but it's not always possible. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we've watched things develop, and we're kind of we're working towards it, but I think it's impossible. Like, even if you look at Ethereum, there's a website, ethereum.org, and it's like, okay, they have a whole bunch of decentralized pieces. I don't think anyone would, well, okay, I shouldn't say anyone, but Ethereum is decentralized. Let me just say that. But they still have a website and stuff like that. So it's like, it's not, and they still have a Twitter account and stuff like that. So it's like, now Bitcoin's a weird one, because like that's one way to make sure your project is decentralized. Just found it and then like disappear from like everywhere, so that no one could find you. And then it's like kind of forced to be decentralized, but we didn't do that. I'm still around, and I still like help out with the website and stuff like that. But yeah, there's the core of BrightID is decentralized. The like actual pieces that make it work.
And the ethos of BrightID. So there's nothing in BrightID that we wouldn't be happy to decentralize when the right tools exist to do that. There's no one that's going to be like, oh no, I won't let go of that power. I won't let go of that control. That's the people that you'd look to have that kind of control are all fully on board with giving it up, and have shown time and time again our willingness to give it up when there's good alternatives.
Right. Can you explain a little bit with the example? Because I think this is really interesting from the DAO point of view. What you just mentioned, I see that in case of a lot of, like, let's say other DAOs as well, where, the need to have a central body keep it, or even some, organizations which have let go of the central body initially and then had to come back. So if you could talk a little bit more about what are the challenges that you face, why, like, for example, you said you don't have enough like appropriate tools for things, for the pieces that are still centralized. If you could give an example, or let's say if there was a piece that was initially centralized and you moved it to decentralization, how you did that, the process of it. If you could talk a little bit more about it, I think it'll be really, really helpful for my research.
I guess I'll give the example. So the way that most people have gotten verified on BrightID is a verification we call meets. And what that entails is showing up to one of these online Zoom parties, connecting to a BrightID star, which is someone that has sort of been authorized to have the authority to verify people. And recently, there's been a game launched on top of BrightID called Aura, which is not run by BrightID Core. A bunch of people overlap because we love BrightID and use it, but it's separate. And instead of using stars, anyone can gain authority in that system to verify other people just from others. So I have some of that now. If you convince me to give some to you, then you have some. And if you then give it to your sister, then she has some. And if she gives it to her friend, then she has some. And there's nothing that I can do to stop it. I can choose to not give it to you. And then if I was the only person giving it, then you wouldn't have it. But if James is also giving it to you, then my removing it from you does not remove your authority. So in that case, we are decentralizing how someone gets verified in BrightID away from a core team that would make that decision.
I see. So, well, but in this case, how will you overcome, let's say, like you said, well, you give me some authority. How will you overcome the challenge as it goes down, like the chain of people getting the authority? How will you make sure that the people, the stakeholders who are getting the authority are reliable, let's say, or like you initially mentioned, are not the bad guys or, the bad players who are just doing it for fun?
Yeah, great question. So one thing that we've noticed is that most attackers are not very creative. They kind of follow the same methods over and over, and it's not like they're coordinating it. It's not like there's some like university of how to that they all go together. It's not like they're in a club together. They're each doing the same thing, and they'll just try the same thing over and over, and it becomes there starts to be patterns in how they approach things that become easy to detect. That's not to say that there couldn't be some more sophisticated attackers. So I don't think BrightID is ever going to be perfect, but I think I can't think of anything better. So I'm always looking. Is there I'm looking because like Philip and I honestly want to solve this problem. It's not like that we think that BrightID has to be the winner or something.
We want we want the problem to be solved.
we want this problem to be solved. And so if someone comes out and is like, hey, like using social and here's something that's obviously better, and this will definitely work. When we look at things that
Hello,
Adam, we're losing a ton of your words all of a sudden.
We lose you.
Here, yeah, I heard Victor just fine though.
Yeah, just fine. Cool.
Yeah, I think it's on your end. I'm not sure what's going on. And your video is clean.
Yeah, and was progressively no
Yeah,
muted by like distortion and then go.
Yeah, so just to finish up what Adam was sort of saying is right. So we're constantly looking. We're part of a whole bunch of different working groups. I was on one today, an anti-Sybil league, all trying to solve this problem. We stay up, we watch everything, and we haven't yet seen anybody that we think has a better, more scalable, more accurate way of doing this. And we're not interested in doing this for 100,000 people. Like, our goal is all of the people. And,
Right.
and we think that this is a problem faced by so many different applications, projects, ideas, societies. It's so pervasive. It's a really hard problem, and it makes sense to have a communal solution to this problem, not a siloed one. And,
Right.
and BrightID, we think, could theoretically scale to the whole world, and everybody can use it. And every time a new user or a new project uses it, it strengthens it for everybody. So we've not seen that. The only other project that I look at out there that I go, could this work? Could this scale to the whole world? Is WorldCoin, and their version is really quite dystopian. We are terrified about the way they want to do it, but at the same time, view it as, yep, if you're going to let one centralized entity be in charge of all this, their method might actually work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's not the world that we think should be. I guess I need to drop to audio only for the rest of this meeting, but I'll let the rest of you continue on.
Can you guys hear me? No?
Yes.
Okay, you can now. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, so so there's a couple other things I looked at. So when I was first launching BrightID, I thought, well, can we just look at Facebook or Twitter? And because there had been research papers written about analyzing Facebook and Facebook-like entities and that have social graphs and detecting Sybils that were really promising. But then I quickly realized that Facebook, and we've even talked to the former VP of identity at Facebook about this problem, and Facebook is not motivated enough to solve it. So I think Twitter with Elon Musk, has some new motivation to try to solve this problem now, but Facebook at the time was not motivated. It actually hurts their business model if they remove all the Sybils. They get paid based on how many people view a certain ad or a certain video, and if they were to solve their Sybil problem, they would hurt their own revenue. So they're not motivated enough. They do have teams inside of Facebook working on it. They have a proprietary solution that fingerprints people, that collects data that we're not even aware of to create a digital fingerprint of their users. They don't tell us how they're doing it. It's part of the solution is that they don't want attackers to know how they're doing it. So they have some success solving that internally, but it's not something that they're outsourcing for everybody else to use. It's just for them. I also looked at governments. Could this be solved by governments? But governments have a hard time coordinating among themselves. So if you did something like passports, first of all, passports are expensive. Some people are excluded. There's undocumented people. There's lots of undocumented people. Then you have to figure out how to get all the countries to work together to adopt the same solution. There's something called e-passports. which is really promising. It's definitely a better step in the right direction from just regular passports, and countries have adopted them at various rates. And some have done it correctly, some have done it incorrectly, some haven't done it at all. They still don't know how to coordinate that among themselves. Because you get like how do you get the signing authorities from Sri Lanka to work with the signing authorities from England, and it's like there's a lot of challenges, and it's not clear how you can federate that. So I like the approach of just saying, like, imagine a world where it doesn't matter so much where you're born. That is, it doesn't matter if you can afford a passport. It doesn't matter if you're so much if your country is I don't know, if your country can afford to buy you a certain service or something like that. So we want something that will work regardless of where you're born. And I really hope it helps to tear down some of these boundaries between countries. I would love it if it really didn't matter where you were born. If BrightID could help with that, because now you have access to universal rights, universal benefits that don't matter, where it doesn't matter where you were born. So I would love to see that, and that's my vision. And I think that it's got to be something like BrightID. It's got to be like privacy preserving, not invasive of your privacy. You shouldn't have to go to you shouldn't have to share biometrics with someone you don't know. You shouldn't have to share documentation with someone you don't know. And so BrightID, we work with the people you do know already. And I think that's the best way to do it.
Amazing. So, okay. So a question that stems from here is that, let's say, so like you said, units of BrightID are still decentralized, and I believe you use token system for decision making in them, right? So like
yeah, so BrightID as its core doesn't rely on any sort of token or any sort of money to work. So that's distinctly different from something like, say, Ethereum, where it needs to have money just to like keep out the spam attacks and stuff like that. Or Proof of Humanity is another interesting project that we've been following for a long time. That also they gate it's gated by money, which can help with Sybil attacks. I mean, that's how Ethereum solves their Sybil attacks. And that's one of the main ways Proof of Humanity does it. So it can be effective, but again, we don't want to limit people based on how much money they have.
Right.
So we don't think that that's appropriate to like charge every single user. We do have something that's opt-in, but then again, BrightID does need to have a long-term way to pay for the maintenance of the service, of this decentralized service. So we do have an opt-in way for apps to say, okay, we're getting benefit from keeping the Sybils out of our apps, so let's pay in. There's something called a sponsorship model where you can choose to sponsor some BrightID users. So if everybody, we crunched some numbers and we said, if everybody who uses BrightID just pays $1 per lifetime, and it becomes global scale, that should be more than enough. And we'll even give the excess back as universal basic income if there's excess, or a universal dividend. We'll just give it back if we have more than we need just to sustain the project. And what I mean by that is like pay the people who are running nodes and stuff like that. So and pay for like the clients that are being built, funding research, funding development, stuff like that. So with that in mind, the apps can opt in and pay to sponsor, or people can sponsor themselves. They can pay that $1 for lifetime sponsor themselves, or the apps that they use. That's a really easy way to do it that we found works. Right now at the scale we're at with around 100,000 users, you can do the math and figure out that, okay, that maybe that's not enough to sustain everything we want to do with BrightID right now. But it certainly will be if we achieve global scale, because it's not it's a pretty cheap solution when you take it to the global scale. It doesn't, servers cost maybe like a BrightID server that could serve the entire world. A BrightID node would cost maybe $100 a month, something like that. So you multiply that by maybe 10,000 BrightID nodes, something like that. It's not that much money to run this entire like system that serves the entire world. It's very cheap. So
Right.
yeah, so it's much cheaper than something like passports. Imagine how much countries spend just to like try to issue passports to all their citizens. So this is much, much cheaper.
So how do you currently enroll like members? So how are members currently enrolled in BrightID if not by buying tokens as opposed to other DAOs?
Right. So you to use BrightID, you just get the app, make a connection, link it to the app that you want to use. So I would encourage you to do that. Try out one of the apps. If unfortunately most, like I think Philip brought this up, most of the apps that use BrightID are just related to crypto and cryptocurrency. So if that's not your thing, you won't find BrightID very interesting right now. We haven't crossed over into the mainstream. There's nothing like you can't use it with Twitter yet. But you can use it with these new blockchain-based like social networks, which I think are more exciting than Twitter, but they're not mainstream yet. So, but I would encourage anyone to go and just download BrightID, see which apps you can use it with. I think Gitcoin is amazing. So look into what Gitcoin is. It's a way to fund public goods. It's a donation platform. I think Rabbit Hole is really interesting. So there's some interesting apps that we partner with. Unitap is really interesting if you're into crypto. It's a way to get gas tokens from lots of different networks so that you can become a crypto user. If you're a new crypto user, you can get free tokens to use in different places from Unitap through BrightID. So yeah, I would encourage you to get BrightID, make a connection to a few people, come to a meets where you can meet already users of BrightID, like some of the people you see here. You might see them in a meets party. You can make some connections with them and just get started on your BrightID journey. You don't need any money to.
Yeah, of course, it's very interesting. I'll definitely try it out. But let's say about the development team. So like, let's say you might need different different sort of teams for different operations and functions. So like, let's say you need people for development. So how does the recruitment for them work? Is it through members?
Right. So that's an interesting question. So DAO recruitment, sometimes it depends on how the DAO is set up. Sometimes DAO recruitment is almost identical to just regular recruitment like you would see. Like I've seen some DAOs, like let's say Aragon, which is a DAO that they kind of pioneered the creation of a DAO platform that everyone could use. So the way they do hiring is very much like any other company you would see. They'll put out the job description, they offer benefits, and I would say most DAOs aren't like that. But that is just one example that's very much like a traditional company. Another example would be like, let's say Gitcoin DAO. Gitcoin DAO has a large thriving DAO. They hire and pay hundreds of people. And their application process is kind of somewhere in the middle.
Right.
I don't think they pay benefits, and I don't think that they'll have like different business entities in different parts of the world, because there are legal DAOs. You can have a legal entity that's recognized by a country that is a DAO, and we actually have one of those, and then we also have BrightDAO, which is not one of those. And so when you're working for a legal entity, it's different than working for a DAO that just exists on the internet. But luckily, there are companies that exist. There's one that we know called Opolis that we're friends with. And what they do is they specialize in helping people that want to work for DAOs to make it more like a normal job. So they do something called co-insurance, where they'll gather a bunch of people that work for DAOs, And they will say what they can do. Let's say you work for BrightDAO. What they can do is they can say, okay, send us the Bright tokens that you get as your salary or your payment or whatever. We will turn that into a paycheck in your local currency. We'll help you get benefits in your country. Right now it's just US, but they want to expand to other countries. And so it becomes more like a regular job.
Right. So, well, in case of BrightID, that you mentioned that there are two. One is the legal entity, and one is the BrightDAO, right?
Yeah, and they're both DAOs. So that's the interesting. One is like a legal DAO. I'll share with the documentation for that, but you can look that up. It has a charter. It's a legal entity in the state of Delaware. I'll share that with you.
Perfect. So, but in both of these DAO, do the people who are involved, let's say people who are performing the job, do they have any sort of ownership in the decision making? Are they part of it? If, like you said, you don't really follow the token system as such. So how are they involved in the decision making if they're a DAO?
Right. So I shared the BrightID Constitution. I'm going to share the BrightID Constitution in here in the chat. But if anyone just Googles BrightID Constitution, they can find it. It's on GitHub. And it's something that we signed February 19th, 2020. So it talks about what it means to be a member of this legal DAO and how the manager registry is managed. But right now there's 15 people on the manager registry, I believe, and we're not trying to, so it looks like there's 19 people. We're not trying to expand. We may swap some people out, but it's very much like a board of directors for a nonprofit or something like that. It kind of operates like that. It's like the board picks new members and onboards them and stuff like that. So that follows very much, even though it is considered a DAO and it uses DAO tools, it's mostly for the convenience of avoiding like some of the delegation problems that so DAOs are interesting tools. You can avoid some of the delegation problems that you have in traditional entities. So let's go back to like a nonprofit board. Let's say that I want in my nonprofit board, we want to make a decision to, let's say, purchase something that we need for our operations. So in a traditional nonprofit organization, you have a vote, you write down everything on a piece of paper, maybe post it on a website nowadays, that you made a decision, who voted, etc. And then you assign someone the task. You say, okay, the board approved this. Now you go and here's the money. We're going to send it to you, and we trust you to do the right thing. Now you go out and buy the thing that we approved. And a DAO kind of flips it on its head. So you set up a smart contract call that says, okay, here's the proposal. The proposal is going to interact with this other smart contract and send money here if it passes. If it doesn't pass, the money is not sent. So it uses a smart contract to set that up. There's no one is delegated the task of like receiving the money and doing something. Then that vote goes up using the DAO software. The vote goes up if that, and everybody uses the DAO software to cast their vote. If that vote passes, it automatically goes through. The money is sent. There's no delegation. So it's an interesting tool. And I think it's a more streamlined tool, more effective tool. You don't have to delegate. You just like create the create the money flow and then vote on it. So it's very interesting. And that's how our DAO works. So even though it looks like, okay, what's the difference between this and a board of directors? When you see how it actually functions, you can see that it's kind of like this more streamlined way of functioning.
Right. So is this tool integrated in all the operations of BrightID right now, or like to what extent are you making use of?
So yeah, we use that to pay core team members. Okay. And so if the sponsorships that we sell, that we talked about that revenue model.
Yeah.
Sponsorships are sold, that money goes into this DAO. It's called BrightID Main LLC DAO. So it's a legal entity and a DAO. The money goes in there, and then these 19 people who are trusted representatives of different organizations that use BrightID. You can see their affiliations on the manager registry, what they're affiliated with. Right now, most of them are BrightID. In the future, we may want to change that so that it's more representation from things like Gitcoin and stuff like that. But for right now, it's like mostly BrightID. Yes, they vote on how that money is going to be used. They must be aligned with BrightID's mission and goals and stuff like that, just like you would expect from a nonprofit. So that's that entity. And yes, so that is right now, that is hooked up to this sponsorship model that's going to pay for BrightID research and development. Then there's another DAO. But like I said, BrightID itself could be just run by volunteers running nodes. They're without a fund to fund the research and development. Could just say, okay, people are just going to work on this in their spare time. It could exist that way. So even if this DAO went away, BrightID could still run. It could still operate. Then we have another DAO, which is a community DAO. So the community said, well, hey, there's only 19 people. What about us? There's over 10,000 people that want to, that are using BrightID actively and are participating in some way, and they don't have a voice. So they don't have a direct voice. So how can they participate? So we launched a new, the community launched a new DAO called BrightDAO, and anyone can be a member of that DAO. You just have to buy tokens, and like it's cheap to get in, and then you can start participating. You just buy Bright token, and then you can start participating in that DAO. And that one also directs funds. It directs the funds of Bright token. It has a covenant, which is a mission statement that's very similar to this other DAO. They have similar mission statements. They're both to help out with BrightID. They both are nonprofit, that no one can make money off of ownership in either one of these entities, but you can, the community gets together and make decisions. Right now we have, I think it's 1,400 people in our DAO, which is a large DAO, a very large DAO by most standards. And they vote on proposals, and people make proposals to that DAO. So we kind of have those two different, I guess you could say, you could almost think of it like two branches of government. You've got like the Congress or something, maybe that's Bright DAO, and then you've got like this other smaller, maybe executive branch or something like that.
Right. I see, I understand. Amazing. I think that covers a lot of my questions. I would like to touch upon a little once back on the funding aspect. Sure. I wanted to ask if you think that funding is an issue in the DAO space itself, like industry-wide DAO space, or just pertaining to BrightID? So you think it's
DAOs are still trying to figure that out, like and the tooling is getting much, much better. When we first started 3 years ago, it was actually, you can ask anyone who was here back then. I think Philip's gone now, but it was much harder to, you were making your life harder if you used a DAO. Yeah. We used it because we thought it was cool, and we wanted to try out this new technology. And Aragon, who was like creating this DAO framework, they were one of the first funders of BrightID. They gave us our first large grant, and so we had a close tie with them, and they asked us, like, hey, would you like to become a DAO, and would you like to be part of our launch of our first DAO framework? And so we said, sure, yeah, we'll try it. And it was hard and it was painful. Now tools are getting much better. We have ways for we have tools that allow DAOs to easily fund other DAOs. And so we've applied to grants from DAOs where there's investment DAOs now. So we where you can apply to a grant from an investment DAO, and the investment DAO can vote on it using the same DAO tools that I described, and send money over to our DAO as an investment or a grant. And so it's really interesting. Like, we can do a token swap. So in some cases, they'll be buying those sponsorships that we talked about as an investment. And in some cases, they'll just be giving us a grant. So DAOs work together much more easily now than they used to. And things are always getting better. So I think things will improve. It will get easier for DAOs to have funding. But it's been hard up to this point.
And do you think this has been hard? Like, this was an expected trajectory because of how new the world space is? So do you think there is a pertaining issue about legitimacy or anything?
Yeah, it was expected. Choosing to be open. So it's kind of funny. It's like there's the easy way and the hard way. The easy way, and we sort of tried both, because we weren't sure of ourselves. So in the early days of BrightID, when we weren't sure what we were doing, we actually pitched to VCs, some large, well-known VCs. I spent a few visits in the office of Tim Draper and Associates, got to meet him. He got to learn about BrightID. I got to give a couple presentations to him about it. They liked it, and they were very encouraging, and said and told us, we're interested in your business model, and we think you should pitch to some other VCs and let us know how that goes, and we want to be part of your funding round. But then we went back home and decided we don't know if we want to do that. We don't know if we want to take VC money, because what are they owning? Because VCs, what VCs are looking for is they're hoping that you'll build something that's a monopoly of some sort, and then they want to own a piece of it, and they want to have control over how that monopoly is governed.
Right.
And that's just, we had a deep discussion, and there were people on both sides of that discussion, and we eventually decided that that's not something that we can do, that we can't allow someone to own BrightID in that way, or own even a small piece, or not a small piece, it would be a pretty large piece. We can't allow someone to own a piece of BrightID in that way. And so even our pitch, which was, hey, there's this open source foundation, and then we're building apps on top of it and businesses on top of it, and you can own a piece of this like business engine that builds things on top of BrightID.
Yeah.
Even that, we didn't want to sell a piece of that to investors. What we wanted, or not VCs anyway. So what we wanted to do was, instead of doing that, we want to try to have those businesses pay back into the DAOs. We think that that's a better model, and that's what we're doing. So Unitap, which has a business model, Unitap is the thing that gives away tokens to get people to use different projects and different networks. So that they take 1% of all the tokens that they give away to pay for their research and development and to pay for BrightID. So what they do is they pay back into BrightDAO. They pay that money back into the community pool, and then they use BrightDAO to govern their proposals. So they could just say, okay, we're a for-profit. So one route that they could take is they could say, we're a for-profit entity, and that's built on BrightID, and we're going to make our revenue, and we're going to pay ourselves, and we can even attract investors. But instead of doing that, what they decided to do was to use BrightDAO, pay the money into the community of BrightDAO, and then open up their business decisions and government decisions to BrightDAO, and say things like, hey, should Unitap build this next, or should Unitap build this next? And then the whole BrightID community gets to vote on what Unitap does. And I think that's way cooler. Like, that's just like, I love that. I love that they're willing to do that. And I hope more people will do that. And so I don't like the VC model. Philip doesn't like the VC model. So ultimately we've turned down like several offers from startup incubators from VCs and stuff like that. And we just tell them, if you want to get involved, please buy our community token. Most of them don't do that. But then again, people like Tim Draper, he's shown that a deep understanding of crypto, and he has done things like he's bought lots of Aragon tokens. We talked about Aragon DAOs. He's bought lots of their tokens. He's bought lots of Bitcoin. So he is capable, at least as an individual, to make those investments. As far as his investment firm, they're probably a little bit more traditional, but he himself, so there's investors like him which could invest in BrightID community DAO, or could buy sponsorships to show support for BrightID. That's certainly all possible, but we're not going to be pitching to VCs anymore.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Adam. First of all, I think that covered most of my questions. It was amazing talking to you. I think I have so much more perspective from my research point of view as well. Definitely, BrightID has a very, very, very good model in itself, I think, and you are really heading for one of the greater causes. So I think I wish you guys really good luck. For the last, I would just like to know if you could maybe share your email or people I can approach in case I want to send, more questions. But most importantly, so that I can also share my research paper.
Oh, please do. Yeah, I missed the first part, so I didn't realize that you were writing a research paper. That's amazing. Yes. Okay,
yes.
great.
So if I could, I would definitely share my research paper so that, you can take a look, you can see that if that's what you want to go, if it's everything is on, board, because I think all of us are aiming for the same direction, which is the betterment of the DAO space. So it'll be amazing if I can, for sure.
Yeah, we're looking to help make DAOs better. We're looking to help make the whole world better. So yeah, we would love to share that with you. So do you use Discord?
Yes, I am already in touch with Ashra.
Okay, good. So you're already in our BrightID Discord server. That's perfect. So yes, I would consider so a couple of resources that you may already know about. You've already found our Discord server. I would look at the paper that's already been written on BrightID. It's a critique of BrightID and several other similar systems. It was written by Paula Berman and some others. And it's called Who Watches the Watchmen? So yeah, I will, yeah, I'll just type that out. Who Watches the Watchmen by Paula Berman. Look up that paper if you haven't already done so.
Sure.
Oops, I spelled it wrong, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, look up that paper, and as part of your research, that's going to be helpful. And we would love to answer questions in as much detail as you want to go about how BrightID works, about how Aura works. She goes into pretty good detail about how the old BrightID verification system worked. We've since moved on to something that we like better called Aura, and there's just not much written on it yet. We've talked about it with other people internally and externally about how, like, do we want to kind of like how we published a white paper with BrightID that goes into some technical details, not like super deep. And then we published some like experimental results for our Aragon grant 3 years ago. So there's some like not peer reviewed, and so the closest thing we have to a peer reviewed paper is this one that I shared with you by Paula Berman. But I've thought about, should we have something for our new verification system that's peer reviewed, that goes into the details of how our new verification system called Aura works. And I would actually love that. So I would love to have, I know you're probably going in a different direction because you're probably doing more a survey of the different options, not just BrightID. But if that's something that we could talk about in the future, that could be really interesting.
Well, Well,
So
of course, I'm writing 3 papers. I can definitely include this in one of them. So we can definitely, I know that there's another call on 10th, so maybe I'll join in there. And once I have this primary write-up after what we discussed today, I can definitely, we can talk in on the 10th, the discussion on 10th of November. I think there's one another AMA on 10th of November.
yeah.
We can talk about it in that AMA, and definitely let's see. I'm really interested in where we're heading, because I think, you know, BrightID is definitely one of the evolving DAOs, so it's very interesting to me how you're dealing with the challenges.
Yeah, definitely. So just a question, since I missed the first part, is your research paper or the papers that you're going to write, are any of them specifically targeting the problem of unique identity in the digital space?
Unique identity,
Yeah.
not so much.
Okay. So it's more about just what tools exist for DAOs.
Yeah. Well, like for example, so the first paper that I'm writing, I'm trying to understand how deep the concept of decentralization or automation, what is the current scenario, because like what DAOs would like to claim, where they are right now, how the space is evolving, because I think we're in the middle. It's not like, you know, an evolved space where we have all the solutions. So I'm trying to understand what is the progress that we have made in these aspects till now. And in my second paper, I want to write more about what are the challenges. So like for example, the simple thing, even which Philip mentioned, like participation from people, or like even other DAOs are facing where they have the token system, but nobody votes, only 1% per people vote. So what are the challenges? These are the areas that I'm trying to cover for now. I'm trying to more of a paper from more general point of view than like, you know, very specific aspect in itself. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, and let's see where it goes.
Sounds amazing.
But if you could really actually share your, let's say, your email or somebody's email, I can send my paper. And also if Ashraf, you could send me the recording of this AMA, because I would need it for my research paper with data. You know, they ask for journals, sometimes they ask you what is the data, are you going to share the data set with us? So this is the data for me, you know.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, so this will actually be shared on YouTube. So this was a public recording. So yes, we will make sure that you get the link to this. I'm glad you've already made contact with Ashraf. Let's work through him to get you direct contact with anyone you need. And as far as like questions, if you feel like you're missing any pieces, just feel free to reach out to any of us individually and get those pieces that you need, and we'll get you all the information you need for your paper.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, Ashraf. Thanks, Victor. Thanks, everyone. And really, I think Philip's already gone, but you guys were so patient to answer everything.
Well, thank you for the wonderful questions. It's actually rare that we get such amazing questions as the ones you ask. So you obviously have skills as a researcher to ask such wonderful questions. So we really appreciate you here. And yeah, you're welcome to come back anytime to our AMA.
Thank you so much, Adam. I'm excited where BrightID goes. I'm excited to see that. Hopefully we'll connect soon. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll drop off.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.
That was a nice AMA. And yeah, if you would like more like this, just, you know, please come back next week. So talk to everybody later. Have a great week. See you soon. Enjoy. Bye.
Cheers, bye. Arro, ¿qué hace? Mire, más a ver si le organizamos el audio.